Okay. Good morning again. I know we've had a good Sunday school lesson, and we're looking forward to a good presentation this morning from Brother Joseph Jones. I know we often say the person who's coming up needs no introduction, but I think that is really true, certainly in this case, certainly for those of us who are Mount Sinai members. Brother Jones has grown up in Mount Sinai, so we know him well. And we enjoyed his presentation last year on his mission trip, and this year he's got another one to share with us. Just briefly, I think we all know he's a graduate of Southwestern Assemblies of God. He was an English major, and I believe, I don't know if this is a secret or not, that he's working on a book right now, but I don't know if we're supposed to be talking about that. But in any event, we're looking forward to a great presentation this morning, and so without further ado, I'd like for you to hear Brother Joseph Jones.
Well, thank you for the warm introduction, sir. And it is okay to talk about the book. Thank you all for the long wait. I'm sorry that this couldn't happen sooner, but it's better late than never, I suppose. And this is about my trip to Vietnam. Most of you do know the country of Vietnam, but here's like a little overview. It is a country in Asia right underneath China, so there is some overlap when it comes to, say, like the government. It is one of the five only communist countries in the world, along with China, Cuba, Laos, and also North Korea. Outside of that, the other claim to fame which Vietnam does have is the Vietnam War, which some of our congregation actually did participate in. As for the faith of Vietnam, one of the core things when it came to my mission trip is that since it is an Asian country, one of the largest portions of the country is Buddhist at 14%. Interestingly enough, there is actually a pretty decent size of Catholicism in the country at 7%. Sadly, there is only like 1% of Protestants, and that's like everyone, to Baptist, Pentecostal, Lutheran, and like everyone is like grouped in is just at 1%. And probably the more really interesting but also concerning number is the Vietnam folk religion, which is at 73%. Now, I'll get into what that entails, but once you do hear it, you will probably be concerned about it. As for one other interesting thing when it comes to religion in Vietnam, though it is very small to the point it's not even a percentage yet, there is atheism is on the rise, especially in the college campuses, considering it's now basically, if you're atheist, you're smarter. It's the newer, cool thing which you have to be, which is why it's predominantly in the college campuses. Now, when it comes to Catholicism in Vietnam, an interesting thing, the reason why it's such a large percentage is because of this man, that being Alexander D. Rhodes. He is a Jesuit, or was a Jesuit, or basically a Catholic missionary, which went to the country. And the reason why he was so successful is because he implemented a certain strategy which a lot of missionaries now use today. That being, instead of just going in there saying, hey guys, you should learn about this guy named Jesus, and then leaving, he actually set up roots into the country. He started to live in the country, started doing businesses in the country, and then actually started sharing the love of Jesus Christ, not only through his words and sermons, but also the way which he lived through with the people. Furthermore, he actually helped create the current writing system, which they're still using today. So he has been very influential, and that is a massive reason why Catholicism is such a high percentage in Vietnam. And despite some differences in there, at the very least, they have some concept of Jesus in the country. However, as you guys see, there is a glaring issue when it comes to Rhodes' strategy, that being that he allowed the locals to do something called ancestral worship. And the issue when it comes to ancestral worship, if you can go to the next slide, is that essentially they are praying to and worshiping their ancestors. They do this through prayer, giving food on altars, and also lighting incense. And they believe that their ancestors are still in form, still living And if you do curry favor with the ancestors, they will give you great fortune. So in that sense, that's why they do the prayer, giving them food and also lighting the incense so that they can get more fortune, especially for their family. And then when it comes to the Vietnam folk religion, not only is it the ancestral worship, but then they also add on doing the same thing when it comes to local gods, local spirits, and essentially when it comes to the folk religion, it's just outright paganism, whereas you can argue when it comes to, say, the ancestral worship, it's light paganism. So considering, once again, to remind you guys, the folk religion is 73% of the country who practice it. It is very concerning, and that's why so many missionaries are trying to help out when it comes to just pretty much preaching the gospel there. And once again, it's very concerning that even when it comes to the Catholic standard, they don't really allow this. In fact, when Rhodes went back to report about his missionary trip, basically his upper heads basically said, we don't like them doing the ancestral worship. This seems like it's paganism. You should not allow them to do that. But Rose more or less said that, no, they should do it. It's a cultural thing. It's fine. But, which has pretty much led to the point where most Catholics are still doing ancestral worship, if not doing the folk religion, which is the reason why, another reason why Protestants are so low, because they put a massive emphasis on that you cannot do ancestral worship. And sadly, due to that, a lot of people who do become Protestants get disowned by their family because this ancestral worship is such a large point in their, not only their culture, but if you do stop doing this, then you also will bring shame upon the family, but also might bring bad fortune to the family since, well, the spirits probably wouldn't like, say, your child basically disowning them. So sadly, this has led to a lot of persecution when it comes to Protestants and the people who just disown this aspect of their culture. Now, when it comes to some of the things which we did in the country, one of the big things was the college ministry, where we went to a college, that being Dai Hump University, and we talked to the students and kind of practiced some of the native language which we learned there. There we also introduced ourselves and invited them to something which we call the Gathering, where we get a bunch of young college students together, and basically we played a bunch of games, ate food, and then we had a little God talk, which is just kind of like a devotional. And then through that, we hope that a lot of them would just keep on coming to not only help them with some schoolwork, but also so that they can practice their English, since that's a big language which they like to practice, especially if they want to know what's going on in America. They like going on YouTube as well. A lot of YouTubers are American or at least British or speak English. And a lot of them really love just talking to us because they get to practice the English. Now, when it comes to learning language, I learned some stuff. To be honest, I haven't remembered everything. But it was a lot of fun, especially thanks to my teacher, Kotam. She was great. And I even got a name from her, a local name, that being Yao, kind of based off of my name, Joseph, that being gift of God, or God is precious or gracious. But speaking of the native language, I do have a video which will hopefully work.
Xin chào, tôi tên Joseph, tôi tên Vietnam là Yao, còn ý họ Yao. Tôi như Mỹ, thích tôi thích Chada, rap boy to
Now that was basically a really simple introduction. I'm just saying like, hey, I'm Joseph Jones. You can also call me Yao. And also I like tea. And then I said, good day, basically. Another large part of what we did there was Lasan, which is the English program where we got a bunch of young kids in the area and basically taught them some basic English, went through the alphabet, taught them how to spell cat, bat, stuff like that. But also another large part was going to a local orphanage there where we played soccer with them and also just kind of hanged out because sadly a lot of the kids at that orphanage and also just orphanage around that area, in fact, just in the country in general, don't really have a lot of people from the outside coming in to just spend time with them. But outside of that, I will say that those kids can really play soccer. Like, me and like 3 other of my friends who came in, played some of the local kids there. It was just embarrassing, guys. I'm just gonna be honest. We scored 3 points, and honestly, I think those were miracles. And then they scored like 10. So, but they know how to play. Another great thing which we did there was Vacation Bible School, where we got the Lausanne kids, but also the orphanage kids, and we did something very similar where we played games, gave them snacks, but also did small lessons when it came to Jesus so that they can actually hear the gospel. But also one of the more heartwarming things is what we did with the orphanage kids, where we threw a birthday party, because sadly a lot of them don't even know when their birthday is, much less had a birthday party ever before. So we just threw like a big old birthday party for everyone, gave them gifts, let them have candy, and it was just great. Now, when it comes to the missionary importance when it comes to Vietnam, one of the big things is that the government, since it is a communist government, doesn't necessarily like the Christians. They kind of just tolerate the missionaries there. They're basically saying, if you guys are here and don't do anything, we don't care, just do your thing, just don't make much of a ruckus. However, one of the big issues is that when it comes to, say, the Northern Folk Tribe, which, as if you see the name, a lot of them do practice the folk religion. So they're basically a massive, untouched group of people who have not even heard of Jesus Christ. So considering that the missionary's job is to spread the gospel, and the government doesn't allow them to do that because that would be making a ruckus, they're basically taking the locals and teaching them how to be missionaries and also teaching them how to be pastors, in hopes that one day the locals can go over to these untouched people groups and then spread the gospel that way. So a large part of the missionaries over there are just not only spreading the gospels in places which they can do, especially in cities, but also just teaching the next generation so that they can do what they can't. And another big thing is that also, once again, emphasis on stopping ancestral worship. When it comes to prayer requests, please pray that the Christians there would have the courage to basically stop doing ancestral worship, since, once again, that is a large decision, and they do need a courage, but also just the guidance of the Holy Spirit when it comes to that. Also, pray for that Christians, especially local Christians, also have the courage to go to the places which the missionaries outside of the country cannot go when it comes to the local tribes. More people being open to Christianity just in the country, especially considering when it comes, once again, emphasizing the ancestral worship. That's a big stickler that you can't do that. So just that more people are open to Christianity. Another thing is that children, they're getting better education and friends, because once again, when it comes to the orphanage, there are multiple issues when it comes to the system which they have there, especially when it comes to not having great education, but also having friends who get them in bad crowds and also get them to doing some stuff like criminal stuff, so that is bad. Another thing is that stopping human trafficking. Sadly, human trafficking is a big thing there. A lot of people from China come into Vietnam, just kidnap people and then had them work in sweatshops over in China. And it's gotten to the point that some people are basically saying, well, I haven't seen X, Y, and Z. Oh, well, I guess he was kidnapped. Let's pray for him. So it is concerning that it's gone to that point, so I'll certainly pray for that. And lastly, just pray that Christians stay strong when it comes to persecution, because once again, hammering in that when it comes to the local religion and also just ancestral worship, the fact that if you give that up, you are going against the grain, and a lot of people will not understand that, and a lot of people will persecute you for that. Now, here's some nice pictures which we had over the trip. Like, that's me eating out with some friends, and also just another friend with a Lasan kid just teaching English. But that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you, thank you. Yes.
Couple of questions. One, person my age, I think about Vietnam and I think about the war, which was really raging when I was a young
Yeah.
man. How are Americans, is there any resentment toward Americans right now that you noticed or you felt being an American in Vietnam? What kind of reception did you get as an American?
For the most part, when it comes to the reception of being American to the locals, they didn't really seem to care. If anything, it seems like, especially when it comes to the younger folks, their reception to America is probably better, especially because of the internet, and especially like I mentioned before, YouTube, stuff like that. A lot of Americans are YouTubers, and that's probably gotten a better reception. I'm not sure when it comes to, say, older people around your age who would maybe hold resentment, but if, I'm sorry about that, I'm sorry, it's true. At least when it came to the people which I hanged around with, which was mostly college-age students, they didn't seem to care. If anything, they thought it was cool that, oh, you can speak English? Let me talk to you so I can practice as well. So thankfully, that didn't seem to be like an issue.
My other question is, do they allow churches there? It's like if you were
No.
there and you wanted to go to church, a Protestant church, is there a place you could literally go, or is it just in groups, or how do you worship? If you're Protestant, how do you worship?
They do allow churches there. That's fine. The only real issue is depending on where it is. Because if you're in a large city, then you can put up a church. It's fine. That is fine. But if you're, say, closer to one of these northern tribes, which they don't want you to touch, then that would be an issue. It is most certainly not like America. Basically, everyone's going. There are basically no stoplights. You basically go whenever you feel like it. Personally, I don't know how they do it. For the most part, traffic isn't necessarily a thing because it's just you keep on going unless there's like a massive wreck and then it's just a standstill, which did happen to us at least once. Outside of that, it's basically just go, go, go.
Did you see any of the, you said it's a communist country, did you see any things that were obvious that it was a communist country?
For the most part, it was, I think I might have seen a flag or two there, but it was mostly just, you knew that it was a communist country, that basically everyone told you that you just need to make sure that you watch what you say about certain things when it comes to the government. Outside of that, there wasn't anything like in your face things about it being a communist country. Yes. Let me see. I think it took about a day in total, but that also deals with time shenanigans, because technically we went back, but then we also technically went forward. So I think it was about a day, but once again, due to like time stuff, I think it might have been more than that. So, yeah. My longest flight, and it's been a while, but I think it was about around 13 hours. So it was long. As my dad would say, it was a bougie hotel. It was very nice. Yes, we were well treated there. Yeah. When it comes to food portion sizes, they're much smaller. In fact, from my understanding, Americans just have bigger sizes when it comes to food, or just about everything. Outside of that, the food was good, and despite not eating as much as I usually did, it was honestly probably better that we didn't. But it was still good with what we had. Ooh, favorite food. I would say, ooh, two foods which really stood out is their curry. They had great curry, it was very good. And also pho, which is basically just Vietnam ramen noodles. Mm. Yes.
Were there American McDonald's, places like that?
Yes, there were a lot of American places there which you can eat. Yes, there were McDonald's, Popeyes, just about everything under the sun. Um, in fact, there were some interesting things over there when it comes to the fast food stuff. Like, technically, they did not have Church's chicken. It's called Texas chicken there. So that's an interesting thing which they had. I think it was because of some copyright stuff or licensing issues when it comes to that. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember that for whatever reason, Church's chicken is Texas chicken there. So. Mhm. No, they were pretty scarce. There were some people in the church when it came to Amy's church, the missionary. There were some people from Africa, I believe Nigeria. But as for Americans who are also African Americans, I think I might have been the only one which I knew of. But there are some Africans who are there, but they're also still kind of scarce. Yes.
Because of the economy there, was a burger cheaper there than it is here?
When it comes to money in general, like American dollar can take you really far. Like I don't remember the exact conversion rate, but it is honestly it's kind of outstanding because like I think a dollar can probably just buy you maybe a full meal for like maybe a day. Once again, I don't remember the exact conversion rate, but it is honestly really ridiculous how much American dollars can just take you there. Like, if you are American and you go there, you can basically, even regardless of your income, you can probably will live pretty well.
You in Vietnam, the country, what
Mhm.
city?
Ho Chi Minh City. It is one of their largest. I think it's either their largest or second largest after their capital.
What about technology usage? Do you see a lot of people on their cell phones or more or less about the same, especially here in school?
It was more or less the same when it came to technology use, though it did seem, at least when it came to my age, it was about the same of technology use, still using YouTube, as I mentioned before, YouTube, especially when it comes to my age demographic in Vietnam. A lot of them love YouTube, use it a lot. They also love TikTok to the point that they were really closely following some of the things when it came to like the US government trying to ban TikTok. Which I thought was interesting because they knew a lot more stuff than I knew when it came to that. But it seemed to be like about the same usage.
And you were North Vietnam,
I believe we were in South Vietnam.
or you were South Vietnam, which is more progressive than North Vietnam.
Yes, interestingly, when it comes to like the North-South split, it's kind of, I would say, it's similar to like the North-South split in America, where when it comes to the South, usually they're seen as like the more in the backwaters, more of the people who just are poor, while the North, people from the North are seen more as the upper class, bougie people who are more rich, to the point where if you come from North Vietnam and try to talk to some people in the locals, South Vietnam, they'll probably see you as someone who's uppity or someone who's just, they might not even understand you. So it's kind of somewhat ironic with that. Even if you don't do anything, it's just the accent, which kind of gives it off. When it comes to buildings, most of them build up instead of out like we do. So it's more of buildings on top of buildings instead of buildings beside each other. Yes. When it comes to vehicles, they are about the same, though interestingly enough, they don't use a lot of cars. They mostly use mopeds, motorbikes, stuff like that instead, because it's cheaper, and also considering since it's go, 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 it's easier to move around other people when you have something which is smaller instead of something which is larger. But considering they use more motorbikes and just bikes in general, you do have some interesting stuff which I have seen there, like a lot of people having their entire family on a bike to the point like there's 4 people on one bike, or there's or they have like entire grocery bags just on their arms while they're going as well. So they are most certainly know how to use their bikes to the best of their abilities. I will say that. There were plenty of crashes from what I've heard. Thankfully, we were not in one of them. But there was one instance, I believe, when we were coming back from a small trip there. When we were trying to get back into the city, there was like just an absolute nightmare of traffic to the point people were stopping on bridges, so it was pretty bad. And there was a big crash which caused that. Outside of that, I am not sure of like the average rate of like car crashes there, but from what I understand, it's most likely higher than the US, but I don't know. When it comes to first responders, there are plenty of first responders there. It just is probably harder to get around people because there are so many people there. And also when it comes to just not being really regulated, road rules when it comes to the road. Once again, it's mostly just go, go, go. Outside of that, so there you can have first responders. It's just probably harder for them to get to people.
And you were there on the school,
Mhm.
college there.
Yes. Yes.
Are you still at this point a part of that missionary group through the school, or were you
Um,
returning to continue this missionary?
as of right now, I'm not a part of the school, and they basically just send students. So since I'm graduated, I'm not sure what their policy would be if I would want to go back on another trip. I haven't really checked in on that. I might do that in the future to see if I could do something. Yeah, might do that. Yeah, but as of right now, simply I don't know. For the most part, they have the similar sports, though they do have a love of soccer, which I mentioned earlier. They absolutely love soccer to the point that they play it to death. And also, they really do like tennis. Outside of that, they basically have the same sports. They just do more sports compared to us. Like, our main thing here in the US would probably be like football or basketball. Their main thing would be soccer or, say, tennis. From my understanding, their businesses are pretty standard. The things which kind of diverge would be business practices, such as they allow a lot of bartering there, where at least in America, it's like, you gotta pay this price, it is set. Where it comes to Vietnam, you can barter, you can ask them to lower it, and there are a lot of tricks which you can lower it, along with like walking away, asking them to lower it, asking them to higher it, stuff like that. My understanding, when it comes to at least the university which I went to, Dai Hump University, is a public university, and a lot of people from all over the world can go there. In fact, there are a lot of people outside of this country who went there to kind of learn about this country, but also learn about the language as well. Yes, they do have barbers there.
You see the things on the news so many times. Someone over 6'2" would be an anomaly.
Yes, usually the population is shorter. I think it is around an average of 5, probably 7, but it's probably kind of ranges to 5. When it comes to taller people, usually they would be out of the country. When it comes to farming, I don't know. I didn't really go to the countryside and I didn't really ask about that. I can tell you that they do farm a lot more rice. Instead of our thing being wheat, they basically do rice. Outside of that, I wouldn't know like their practices. Well, the school district was very similar to schools in America, at least when it came to the university, which I went to. Outside of that, it was basically just swapping out a lot of English words and people there with people who are local to the country, and also just swapping out the language. One interesting fact, though, at least when it came to the school which I went to, they did have a statue of Albert Einstein, which was kind of funny because when we were walking around, I just saw Albert Einstein outside of just a sea of local Vietnam people. But I was like, hey, is that Albert Einstein? And my friend was like, no, why would he be here? There's no way. And then when we looked at the statue, it was. So that was somewhat amusing. When it comes to the local language, yes, because I don't really know it. When it came to English, they spoke really well, English really well. Well, at least when it came to my age demographic, and that kind of comes into play that they play a lot of American games and also spend a lot of time on YouTube. So a lot of people, when it came to like college age or younger, a lot of them just learn English from YouTube and video games.
We take maybe one more question, and I think we might have to shut it down, please.
When it came to that, we were basically just our time, just everything inverted. So it is, let me check now. Is 11:21. So it would basically be their midnight right now, or at least close to midnight right now over there.
Thank you very much, Joseph. We really enjoyed this. And let me say, we really appreciate all the effort and time you obviously spent on this. So we're grateful to you. Thank you. And thank you very much for coming back, and you're still working with us and sharing with us. And if anyone has any more questions, I'm sure Joseph will be happy to talk to you later on. So we've just had a really great presentation. Thank you so much. It's about 11:20, 11:21. We'll be reconvening at 11:30 for morning worship. Thank you all very much. And again, applause to Joseph.